I will record the session and I'll post it so you can watch the lecture again later on. Okay. All right. So in this particular chapter, we're going to talk about two basic things. We're going to talk about incremental analysis. Incremental analysis means should you go with a certain option or not? In other words, should you make something or should you buy it yourself? Should you process something further or should you not process something further? Should you manufacture a product in your factory, or is it better to find a supplier to get that product? Okay, so that's the first question we're going to answer. And the second question we're going to answer is how to make a flexible budget report. Okay, so let's write this down in the notes here. So the two objectives for today are similar, but they're a little bit different. Okay, the first objective is going to be incremental analysis. In other words, should you, for example, make something yourself or buy it? Okay. In other words, incremental analysis means should you do what you're doing now or should you change? Should you keep doing the same thing or change what you're doing? The second thing we're going to talk about is a flexible budget report. Okay. Flexible budget report means that you have an original budget which you update so you can compare against what actually happened. Okay, so for example, with a flexible budget report, let's say that you have a budget for like a trip to Hawaii, right? That's called a static budget. That's called your original budget. This is called your original budget. Sometimes you have to take your original budget and you have to update it with new information. We call that a flexible budget. This is an updated budget. So we're going to talk about the process of taking static budgets or original budgets and then updating them with new information to create what we call a flexible budget. Okay? So again, what we're going to talk about today is how to figure out whether you should change what you're doing or keep doing the same thing. And secondly, we'll talk about taking an original budget or an original plan of what you're going to do and then updating it with new information. What these two things have in common is that these are part of what we call the budgetary control process. Okay? Control means how to save money or how to optimize the profits of a company. If you are producing a product, you have to think about financially, is it better for me to make the product myself or should I go out and buy it? That's a financial decision or a managerial accounting decision. If you're trying to do some planning or control, seeing if you're over or under budget, of course, everybody starts with an original or static budget, and then they update it with new information, and we call that a flexible budget. So these are the different types of concepts and components that we're going to talk about in this process of what we know as budgetary control. So for budgetary control, we develop a budget, and then we analyze our budget against what actually happened. And then we figure out, okay, are we over budget? Are we under budget? How can we change what we're doing? So we take corrective action. And then with corrective action, then you're going to apply that to your strategy and figure out, okay, well, maybe we should eliminate a division. Instead of making a product, maybe we should go out and find a supplier and buy it from another company that can produce it for cheaper than we can. And then we're going to use all of these decisions and changes to create the budget again next period. And then we're going to compare what we think is going to happen to what actually happened. And this budgetary control process is ongoing, never ending. So a couple of things that you need to know for this budgetary control process are some terminology. First of all, when we have a cost, costs either can be controllable or non-controllable. Okay, so a controllable cost is something that you can affect or something that you can influence. So a controllable cost would be like going out to eat, shopping, like not grocery shopping, but maybe going to a mall or something and buying clothes or buying like a handbag or buying a watch or something like that. That you can control. It's to some extent discretionary. Some people think heating costs could be controllable. For example, maybe in the wintertime, you can turn your thermostat within a certain range up or down, right? So you have some control over that. But this brings up the point that some costs are clearly controllable. You can either eliminate them or not. And other costs are maybe kind of in the middle. It's somewhat controllable. And some costs are not controllable at all. For example, if you have to drive to work a certain number of miles and you have to use a car, then the price of gasoline is something you cannot control. You might be able to control which gas station you go to, but you can't control the fact that you have to pay for gasoline. You might be able to be more efficient and use less gasoline, but you can't eliminate it completely. So to some extent, the price of gasoline is a non-controllable cost. Taxes, to a large extent, are non-controllable. If you make a certain amount of money, you may be able to engage in certain tax shelters, or you may be able to do certain things to reduce your taxes, but you can't eliminate them. Same thing with tuition cost. So I think somebody mentioned in this class earlier that AU is like 68,000 a year, which I didn't know. So that's a lot of money. So you can't really control how much the tuition is, right? You can control whether you get maybe a scholarship or not because you can apply for one. You may be able to reduce some of your costs to some extent, but to a large extent, those are non-controllable costs. So an important concept in what we're talking about today is to be able to classify costs as something that you can control or something you cannot control. So I have a question for you. As a student, what are some controllable costs? What do you think? What are some controllable costs as a student? How about eating out? I mean, it's nice to eat out, but you don't have to, and you can eliminate it if you really need to. What are some costs that you think are pretty? Some daily expenses, good, Molly. Certain daily expense costs would be controllable. Any other controllable costs as a student? Yep, gym membership you can control, right? That's a good example. Anybody else have any other examples of controllable costs? How about bubble tea? Okay, so I don't have to drink bubble tea. I like to drink it, but I can control the costs and I can eliminate it if I really need to, because it's not necessary. Okay, how about some non-controllable? Yeah, YouTube, Netflix, those things you can control also, right? That's true. So some people pay for like the YouTube premium, but to some extent you can control that because you don't need it, right? So really a lot of times controllable and necessary or unnecessary kind of go hand in hand. If a cost is controllable, typically it's something that you don't have to have. Going to the movies is controllable, right? What about non-controllable costs? Rent is non-controllable. I mean, you may be able to control it to some extent because you can try to live somewhere cheaper, but you have to pay for rent, right? I think essential like groceries and food, Maybe you can reduce it, but you can't eliminate it. Those are non-controllable. I think AU has a student activity fee. You can't control what it is. You just have to pay it. Health insurance, yeah, you have to pay it. Okay, good. Okay, so this sounds a little bit like what we talked about last time. Remember responsibility accounting? That was from the last chapter. Responsibility accounting has to do with control, right? What things do you have control over? In this diagram here, you can see a cost center. I have control over my expenses, or I control my costs. Profit center, you control your expenses and your revenues. And an investment center is where you control your expenses, revenues, and investments. There's something missing here, and that's a revenue center. And that's not mentioned here because it's not as common. A revenue center is more like a sales department. And here you have control over revenues. You're responsible for revenues. So when we say the word control, we can also say responsibility for. Okay, good. Okay, let's talk about the first major concept area for today, incremental analysis. So incremental analysis is something you have control over. And incremental analysis is basically a four-step process. Okay, so I found this diagram from a different book. Okay, it looks kind of funny, so I put it here. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. But incremental analysis means that you identify a problem and assign responsibility. Okay, so for example, we have costs for supplies. You assign responsibility for those costs. You figure out what are some courses of action we can take, right? So maybe we can either make the supplies ourselves or we can go out and buy them from somebody else. And then when you make a decision, you want to go back and then identify how effective your decision was, right? So you want to figure out when we decided to buy a product instead of making it, how much did the actual cost end up being? How much did we expect it to be? Did we have a favorable or unfavorable variance? So when you perform incremental analysis, you're talking about making a decision, or you're talking about a choice among alternatives. Okay. Let's take a look at number 7. Let's skip down to number 7. What are some kind of incremental analysis decisions you can make? Okay. There's a lot that we can think about. Let's come up with some like examples. So for incremental analysis, you can either make or buy something, right? What else do you think? Think incremental analysis is either do this or do that. You can sell something or keep it. Okay, how about as a student, you can stay in school or drop out. Okay. Can you think of some other examples for incremental analysis? You can either do this or do that. Okay, you can rent something or buy it. That's very good. Rent or buy like a house or a car. You can go out or stay in. What else? You can work out or eat ice cream. Oh, actually, you could do both. Okay, so that's not an incremental analysis. You can work out or not work out. We're talking about you have to do one or the other. You can't do both. Okay, yeah, you can sleep or study. Good, Molly. Okay. I saw like a video on YouTube. They said, oh, you can like study and learn something in your sleep. Right? I don't know if that really works, but probably you have to either choose to sleep or study. You can't do both, right? So can't do both. Okay. Give me some other examples. There's lots of examples. You can drink coffee or not drink coffee. Give me one or two more examples. You can major in accounting. Actually, okay, that's not a good example. I was going to say you can major in accounting or not, but that's not a good example because you can actually double major. Okay, you can be early or late. Good, Madison. Okay. One last one, folks. Something you can't do both. Somebody in the other class said, oh, you can be in a relationship with somebody or not. And then somebody said, oh, but can't you be in like, you have more than one relationship at the same time? So maybe that's not a good example. Okay, all right. Be in one place or another. Okay. Okay, good. All right, so you get the idea. So with incremental analysis, the key idea that you need to know is that you have to think about relevant versus irrelevant. Okay? So incremental analysis is a question over relevant versus irrelevant. Okay. And I think people intuitively know this already, but relevant items include revenues and expenses that change depending on the decision that you pick. An opportunity cost is also relevant. So if we make a list here, when we do incremental analysis, what are relevant costs? You can say controllable costs. Irrelevant would be something that you can't control, non-controllable costs. Relevant would be like an opportunity cost. Does anybody know what an opportunity cost means? What is an opportunity cost? Opportunity costs are relevant, but what is an opportunity cost? I think it depends on who you ask. Economists have a definition for opportunity cost. Give up something in order to do something, yeah. Okay, what you lose because you don't do something. Okay, I have an example of an opportunity cost. So my uncle is very generous, and he said, "Oh, I want to, you know, be nice to all of my nieces and nephews. So we're gonna play golf, and I'll pay for everything, and then we're gonna go out to lunch. But you have to show up at 7:30 in the morning at my house." Okay, so I was like, "Whoa, 7:30 on Saturday?" So like 7 o'clock in the morning, I said, "Oh my gosh, this is too early for me. I don't want to go." So what did I lose because I didn't get up and play and show up at my uncle's house? I lost like the ability to like play golf for free and get a free lunch. That's an opportunity cost. It's what you're losing out on. So if you make an incremental analysis decision, opportunity cost is important, but what's irrelevant is a sunk cost. Okay? Sunk cost, that's irrelevant. Does anybody know what a sunk cost is? What is a sunk cost? I know it's an irrelevant cost. In other words, when I'm doing incremental analysis, I don't need to think about sunk cost because it's irrelevant. But what does that mean, sunk cost? Sunk cost means usually it's a past cost. You can't do anything about it. Right? So an example of a sunk cost would be, I paid for Netflix all of last year. Okay, that money is gone. Netflix is not going to give me my money back. That's a sunk cost. Okay? So sunk costs are irrelevant. Okay, so in other words, relevant costs are controllable. Opportunity costs, we can also say they are incremental costs. They tend to be future costs. Irrelevant costs are non-incremental. Incremental means it changes. Past costs are irrelevant. Okay, so when you are deciding to buy something or rent something, if you're deciding to go to the gym or not go to the gym, you have to think about, okay, well, what are my costs? What are my benefits? When you think about incremental analysis, you think about stuff you can control. You think about opportunity cost. You think about incremental cost, something that changes. You think about future costs. Basically, you think about things that can change if you do something or if you don't do something. Irrelevant things are things that you have no control over, non-controllable costs. Sunk cost is something that's already happened. You can't do anything about it. Non-incremental is a cost that is there no matter what. Past cost already happened. It's not going to change, right? So for incremental analysis, only think about things you can control and things you can change. Okay, I have a story to share with you. In my office hours, several years back, I had a student who showed up and wanted some relationship advice. Okay, so this was a first for me because as an accountant, I'm used to people asking me questions about accounting or about the homework, but somebody came and said, "Oh, professor, I have a relationship uh, advice question." And they said, "I've been in a relationship with this person for like 6 years." Okay, and this person was like a student in college, so they're like 20 years old, and I'm like, "Wow, so you've been dating the person since you were 14, and now you're 20. It's a long time." Uh, and the person said, "I don't know if I should stay in the relationship or not." Right? I've already spent 6 years of my life with this person, and I've already invested a lot into the relationship. I don't know what I should do. And what I told the person was, this is an incremental analysis question, right? Because you have to make a choice among alternatives, right? And you can't do both, right? You're going to either be in the relationship or not. You can't do both at the same time. And you should not think about the 6 years you've already spent with the person because that's not controllable. You can't do anything about it. It's a sunk cost, already happened. It's not going to change depending on your decision that you make. It's already happened. It's non-incremental and it's in the past. And the person said, "Thank you very much. That helped me make my decision." And I don't know if they stayed with the person or not. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is that for incremental analysis, I never use the word fixed or variable. Here, I'm not really talking about fixed or variable because look at number 6 here. Incremental analysis sometimes involves changes that might seem contrary to your intuition. I'll just read this. Variable costs do not change under the alternative courses of action. If you have a variable cost that doesn't change, then it's irrelevant, even though it has the word variable next to it. Okay? It could happen. It's weird if it happens, but it's possible. If you have a fixed cost that does change, like something you can avoid, that would be relevant. Okay? So when we talk about incremental analysis, people are tempted to say, okay, well, fixed is always irrelevant, variable is always relevant. Depends. What is important to remember is the behavior of costs. How a cost behaves determines whether it's relevant or not. Okay, yeah, from tax, yeah, if you can avoid tax, then tax all of a sudden may become relevant if you can avoid it, right? Okay, does this make sense for everybody? Relevant and irrelevant. Only worry about things that you can change. Madison, you have a question.
So they're both irrelevant costs. Like one's not relevant and the other is like irrelevant. They're both like irrelevant costs.
You're talking about the variable and the fixed here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the point I'm trying to make is variable and fixed, is it relevant or irrelevant? Depends. In this example, it says if you have a variable cost that does not change, okay, that's weird, but it's possible. Let's say you have a variable cost that is going to be the same no matter what you decide to do, then it would be irrelevant because, I mean, it doesn't change. It's a sunk cost. It's non-incremental. If you have a fixed cost that somehow changes, weird, but it's possible, then it would be, okay, relevant. Thank you. Okay, does that
Thank
answer your question?
you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. Okay, I'll have a question. When have you used incremental analysis ever? Has anybody ever used incremental analysis? Some people actually like take a piece of paper and then they make like a line down the middle. They say, you know, option A, option B. Have you ever used incremental analysis? Okay. Can you share what it was? Nothing too personal. Like you don't have to tell us about your relationship. I've used incremental analysis, pay off my mortgage or not. I've used incremental analysis, buy a house or rent, buy a car or lease or finance a car. Good, Madison. College A, college B. You can't do both, right? How about other people? When have you used incremental analysis? Maybe you can share. Okay, how about go to restaurant A or B? Study abroad or not? Yeah, you can't do both. Lose weight or not? Okay, it's a good example. Okay, all right. Anybody else have any other examples? Okay, all right, very, very good. Okay, that's it for incremental analysis. Not too bad. Anybody have any questions about incremental analysis? No questions? Okay. All right. So incremental analysis is also helpful for relationships, apparently, right? Okay. All right. The second thing we're going to go over is a flexible budget report. Okay. Static and flexible. Okay, this is what you need to know. I'm going to try to use a fun example to keep things interesting. Okay, so what you need to know is we have two types of budgets: static budget, flexible budget. And we'll start with that. A static budget is a budget at one level of activity. A flexible budget is a budget created for more than one level of activity. Flexible means it moves, flexes, right? Static means it's the same. It doesn't move. Right? More to the point of what we're talking about today, a static budget is really an original budget or original guess. That's a static budget. A flexible budget is an updated budget, an updated guess. So in the decision-making process for incremental analysis or any type of responsibility control, you always do a static budget first, and then you do a flexible budget second. Okay. So static budget always is first, and a static budget is always second. Okay. All right, so let's illustrate the difference between a static and a flexible budget. Okay. All right, so I think you all could use a vacation, and so could I, okay, because it's the end of the semester and summer is almost here. So let's go on vacation. We're going to create a static budget. Okay. So we are going to plan for a vacation. And Madison, where are we going to go on vacation? And for how many days?
Let's go to Hawaii for a week.
Okay, Hawaii. Oh, like a full week, 7 days or 5 days?
7 days.
7 days. Okay. So Hawaii 7-day vacation. Oops, for 7 days. Excuse me. Hawaii for 7 days. Okay, now we need to create a static budget. Okay, so what are some items that we need to pay for? I have one. Flight. Okay, airfare. What else? That's it. We just need to fly there. I think we have other expenses. Okay, hotel. Yes, definitely hotel. Okay. Okay. I think we need to eat some food, right? So food budget. Is that it? We're just going to sleep, eat, and just get there. Anybody have any other budget items we should include? Excursions. Yeah. Okay. So excursions. Okay. 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 So Li Cheng said vehicle expense. Are we gonna rent a car or like take a taxi? Li Cheng, you decide for us. Taxi or rent a car? Taxi.
Rent a car, I think.
Okay, rent a car is better. Okay, all right. So rent car rental. Okay. Anything else? How about shopping? Shopping budget. Okay. Okay. Anything else? You all are so easy. This is all you want to spend money on? Nobody wants to do anything else? Spa budget. Okay, good. Spa budget. Okay, I like the spa too, actually. Spa budget. Okay. That's it. Somebody in the other class said, how about drinking budget? Sure, why not? Drinking budget. Okay. Wait a minute. I'm going to change this car rental to taxi because if we're going to be drinking, you shouldn't be driving. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So how much is the hotel going to be? I don't know, actually. This is where you have to do some strategizing. Do you want to stay like at a basic hotel just to sleep? Or do you want to stay at a really luxurious hotel where it's like really nice and there's like a view? So what do you think? $700 a night or $700 for 7 days? Li Cheng, you decide because you wrote in the chat 700. Do you want to stay at like a budget hotel, like cheap hotel, or luxurious?
I think $7 for 7 days.
Okay. All right. So the $100 a night. Madison, you wrote something different. Oh, you wrote before Li Cheng. Did you write luxurious?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Why don't we stay at $1,000 a night hotel? So 7 nights, that's going to be $7,000. Okay. How about airfare? Does anybody know how much it'll cost to fly there? What do you think? Just give me a number then. I don't know either, actually. Anybody have any idea? Type in the chat. Okay, I'm going to say $500. Okay, how about excursions? How much should we budget for excursions? do you think? Anybody? Charles, what do you think? Maybe we're going to go snorkeling. Maybe take a boat, like take a boat ride. I don't know. Parasailing. $300. Okay, it's fine. How about a taxi? How much should we budget for a taxi? $80. That's it. Okay, all right. Well, I'll go with that. Food, I need to eat every day. So how much per day for food? In the other class, we did the same activity and they said $10. I'm like, $10 a day for food? You're gonna eat McDonald's every day? How much a day for food? I like to eat, so how about, I don't know, what's a good budget amount? $700. Okay, so $100 a day for food. 150. Okay, 150 times 7 days. So, okay, see, I'm already getting excited now because now I feel like we're going on vacation. 150 times 7 is 1,050. Shopping. Shopping. I mean, I don't want to go shopping every day. I don't know if you do, but maybe shopping can just be one number. $1,000. Okay, $1,000. Okay, good, Charles. $1,000 for shopping. Okay. How about spa budget? Medicine, that was your idea. So how much for a spa budget?
Like maybe 450 or something.
450. Okay, all right. So I don't think we're going to go every day, but that would be a good number. How about drinking budget? Nobody wants to answer that question. Okay, we'll say $100. $1,000. Oh, that was from the last one. Okay, $100. $2,000. Okay, $2,000. All right, that's fine. Okay, good. So let's add this up and let's figure out the total. Okay, so the total is, okay, this is a very lavish vacation. This is what you get, 12,380. Okay, I want to point out that we went on vacation for 7 days. 7 days. Okay. Let's say that what actually happened is that we had a great time and we decided to stay 3 days extra. So we stayed for 10 days. Okay, so then my actual, let's say my actual costs are as follows. Let's say hotel was $10,000. Let's say food was $1,350. Let's say shopping was $900. Spa was $600. Drinking was $1,980. Let's say airfare was $500. Excursions were $400. And then taxi was $120. Okay, so then my actual cost is how much? I get 15,850. Is that what you get also? Somebody else want to check that? Does that look right? Okay, I'm just checking real quick. Okay. All right. Here's my question now. Is it appropriate to compare my static budget against the actual cost. Is it reasonable to compare these costs here on the left side against these costs on the right side? This is the key point that I'm trying to make for this concept. Is this appropriate? Is it fair for me to say, wow, you actually spent 15,850, but the budget was 13,380? That is not good. Does that sound fair to you or not? And why? What do you think? I'm not going to let you get away with not saying anything because this is the key point in this chapter. How about Madison? What do you think? Is this fair or not fair?
I don't think it is because like you're not comparing it based on like the same thing. Like the only one I feel like you could compare would be the hotel cost because like there is a base cost that they share, but every other cost is different.
Okay, good. Very good. Li Chang, can you explain what you meant in the chat, please? Why is this not reasonable to compare?
I just think the number that decide to stay in that vacation is different, so
Yeah.
V is not the computer.
Very, very good. Okay, so Li Chang and Madison, absolutely correct. My original budget was for a 7-day vacation. I actually stayed on vacation for 10 days, right? So obviously, if you stay for longer, the cost is going to be bigger, right? So, I mean, I can kind of understand, yeah, actual cost is 15,850, budget cost is 13, I mean, it's 12,380. But better would be to take this budget and update it and say, okay, well, what would the budget be if I stayed for 10 days, right? And compare against how much the actual cost is for 10 days. That's fair, right? In other words, this budget is not really that good because it's for 7 days. If we actually stay for 10 days, can I update this static budget and figure out how much it's supposed to be if I stay for 10 days? Then let's compare the flexible budget against the actual budget, right? So static budget is what you make first. And then if you stay on vacation for 10 days instead of 7, you should update the static budget and create a flexible budget. Okay. So this budget we need to update. Okay, this budget is not all bad, but it should be updated with new information. And that updated budget is called the flexible budget. Okay. So let's create a flexible budget report. That means I'm going to take all of these costs Okay, so let me delete them and we'll update these costs. So we're going to take these costs and we're going to update them and create a flexible budget. Okay, so let me do this, put it on one page. Okay, here. Okay, so I want to figure out what is my flexible budget if I stay for 7 days. I want to figure out, 10 days. They already give me my actual cost if I stay for 10 days. And then I can compare. That makes sense. Okay, so my actual cost for the hotel was 10,000. How much would it have been if I stay for 10 days? If it's 1,000 a night times 10, right? 1,000 a night times 10 should be 10,000. Okay, so then my budget for my hotel for 10 days should be 10,000. That's not bad if I actually spent $10,000. My original budget for food was 1050, but I need to update that. How would I update the food budget? Assuming I still spend $110, I mean, $150 a day. Multiply it by 10, so that's 1500. My actual cost was 1350. So actually food, I spent less money than the budget was. Shopping is like one amount, so that's not going to change. So we'll just leave it the way it is. So shopping is still 1000. The actual is 900. Okay. Spa is a fixed amount, like it's just one number. So spa, we'll just leave it at 450. And I actually spent $600 at the spa. Drinking budget is just one number, so we can just leave it. We don't have to adjust it. So it's 2000. We actually spent 1980 drinking, so that's not bad. Airfare is one number. It's not like per day, so we'll just leave it. And then the actual is 500. Okay, and then that's true for the other two costs. Okay. All right. Okay, does this make sense? Can you give me a thumbs up if this makes sense? Static and flexible. Okay, so Madison, you put your thumb up. Can you tell me the difference between a static budget and a flexible budget, and why is a flexible budget important?
So a static budget is like you're only budgeting for one specific thing with no changes, and like a flexible budget, you're budgeting for something where there is a change, and it's important to like have the flexible budget so that if something occurs, like you want to extend your trip or something, you have like the ability to move your budget around, I guess, like easier to compare like what you've spent with like what you planned on spending.
Very good. Then my question is, why do you even need a static budget in the first place if you're going to update it? What's the purpose of a static budget if you're just going to update it? Because you have to have some kind of like guess about how much you're going to spend. You have to have like a base like guess, or you have to have like a starting point. The static budget is the starting point. Okay, good. Do you have any questions on this chapter? Okay, then let's do one problem here. Okay, so let's take a look at this problem here. Let's take a look at brief exercise 23.5 because it includes the information from both parts. It says data for Gundy Company is given in brief exercise 13.4, which is above. It says in March 2022, the company incurs, remember incur means actual, the following costs in producing 100,000 units. Okay, so they produce 100,000 units. They have, let's make a list here. Direct materials. Okay, so we want to put budget. We can say actual, and then we can also even do a variance. So direct materials actually were 520,000. Then you have direct labor. And that was actually 596,000. And then you have variable overhead. That was actually 805,000. I'm just copying the information they give me. It says also actual fixed costs were equal to budgeted fixed costs. Okay, what fixed costs are they talking about? Okay, it says look at above, it says budgeted fixed manufacturing cost per unit for, we have depreciation and supervision. Okay, so these are some numbers. We'll fill them in just a minute. Okay, so we actually made 100,000 units. That's what it says in the problem. Right. So I want to make a budget to figure out how much cost I'm supposed to have if I make 100,000 units. What is this budget called, by the way? I'm trying to create a budget for what it would be at 100,000 units. What kind of budget is this called? It's called a, the first budget is called a static budget. So the initial information is the static budget, but if you update the numbers, because we have to use the original numbers and update them, then it's called a flexible budget. Okay, so it says the company expects to produce 1.2 million units. Okay. And then their production is expected to be between 80,000 and 120,000. It says, oh, I expect that variable costs include direct materials would be $5. If you make 100,000 units, how much is your direct material cost going to be or expected to be? 5 times 100,000 is $500,000. The original information is the static information. If we update it or use it in a new scenario, or if we use it and change and change it around, then it's the flexible budget. How much is direct labor expected to be if you make 100,000 units? It's $6 each, so 600,000. Variable overhead would be 800,000. Okay, 800,000. Okay. And then it says budgeted fixed manufacturing costs are depreciation $2, supervision $1. Okay. So this one is a little bit tricky. This is what we have to do. Okay, in the static budget, they plan to make 1.2 million units, right? That was the static budget, the original budget. And they said that depreciation is $2, right? So that's $2.4 million for the year. This is for depreciation. If we're doing this only for March, in March is only 1 month. 2.4 million is for the whole year. So in March, it is 2.4 million divided by 12, because we just want for 1 month, just March. That's 200,000. How much is supervision expected to be for the month of March? If it's $1 per unit. It's 1.2 million for the year. This is for supervision. So in March, it is 1.2 million divided by 12 is 100,000. Okay. So my budgeted depreciation cost is 100,000. My budget, I'm sorry, 200,000. My budgeted supervision cost is 100,000. And it says the actual cost is exactly what the budget was. Okay, can anybody explain where I got this 200,000 from? Can anybody explain that? Anybody want to try to explain that? Li Cheng, can you tell us where did this number come from? 200,000.
So we need first like multiply $2 per unit to 1,200 thousand units, and then divide by 12 months.
Good. Okay, so the wording is tricky, but they said depreciation is fixed. It's $2 each unit if I make 1.2 million units. Okay, so how much is it actually? It's $2 per unit if you make 1.2 million units. It's really $2.4 million. I wish they just told me that. And then we're doing this budget for just 1 month. If it's 2.4 million for the whole year, fixed cost is always the same every month. Divided by 12, it's 200,000 just for 1 month. Right? So that's how you get the number. So actually I spent 520,000, but my budget was 500,000. So that's $20,000 too much money, unfavorable. I actually spent 596,000. That's less than the budget. So that's good. So that's 4,000 favorable. Here I spent 805,000, but I actually only expect to spend 8,000. So that's 5,000 unfavorable. And then here there's no variance. Okay, good. Does anybody have any questions on how we did this problem? Okay, then let's review the stuff that we talked about today. For incremental analysis, what does that mean? And what things do you have to look out for? Who can tell us? Okay, how about Charles? Can you tell us what is incremental analysis? And how do you do it? Like just in your own words.
Okay, so incremental analysis is that you just keep doing like the same thing, like just don't change it. And with the flex, okay, I think that's the only one I need to say, right? I don't need to say flexible.
Okay, so
Yes.
incremental analysis is like
yes, don't change, just like don't change, just keep doing the same thing.
Okay, good. So incremental analysis means you have to do either one or the other. You can't do both, right? So if you're trying to decide either do X or Y, you can't do both. Then you have to only think about things that you control. You can consider opportunity cost, stuff that changes incremental cost, or future cost. Everything else you ignore. When you make a budget, the first budget, your original guess, is called the static budget. If you update the static budget with new information, we call that the flexible budget. Okay, good. Anybody have any questions about anything?